morning, everyone. Hello. Welcome to the latest in a series of Express webinars on Phoenix, brought to you by Certara University. My name is Tom Jones, and I am the Scientific Training Manager for Certara University. Today, I will present some tips on how to implement company policies for reporting NCA results. I will be using version 8.1 of Phoenix, but the NCA features I will show you are also available in Phoenix 8.0. In this webinar, we will first make use of the new built-in business rules that were implemented in version 8.0. Second, we will examine the impact of those rules on the NCA output. Third, we will see how we can use the data wizard to post-process the output that we'll be using to create the tables. And finally, we will see how to reuse our work by creating a workflow template. Starting with Phoenix 8.0, we now have two ways to implement business rules. First, we can customize two aspects of the best fit algorithm for selecting points to use for lambda z, the maximum number of points and the earliest time for the slope. Please note that these rules are only applicable to plasma and urine NCA models and not the drug effect model. Second, we can set rules for lambda z acceptance criteria. This allows us to flag the output data based on the R-squared adjusted, the percentage of extrapolation, and the span, which is the number of half-lives spanned by the linear fit. The new options are on the Rules tab. Here's the Rules tab in the NCA object. First, let's look at the options to specify the number of points. So this is a way to make sure that only the terminal phase is used for the lambda z calculation. Let's take a look at the example here. In the top screenshot, this one here, notice that for subject number 3, 10 points were used for the estimation of lambda z. However, in the bottom screenshot, we have entered 6 for the maximum number of points, and now only 6 points are used. The lambda z rules we see here are applicable only to the best fit method and not to the time range method. And since we're forcing the program to customize the best fit method with these rules, this will likely change the lambda z values that we obtain. Now, these plots also show the effect of using the start time. On the left is the fit for one of the subjects with using the default settings with no time limit. And the start time has automatically been chosen as 45 minutes. We may decide that this is getting too close to our distribution phase and that we might want to increase the limit. So here is an example of setting it to 120 minutes, which is one option we could do, and then that would move it so that it would have to start here, and no points before them would be used. And then you can see that this ends up using only 3 points in the fit. This will probably change the lambda z and the half-life, and so the result would be a little bit different. Both of these settings are optional. You can leave one or more of them blank. You can use them or not use them. Now let's consider some of the standard business rules that you might want to implement for lambda z acceptance criteria. We have 3 different criteria, as you can see here. We have the R-squared adjusted. We can put limits on the percentage of extrapolation for AUC, which might be either observed. We have a couple of choices, observed or predicted. And then we can also do the span, which again is the number of half-lives. The results of the acceptance criteria will be a code that comes back of either accepted, not accepted. Then you can also get 2 other ones: insufficient if there's not enough data to make the determination, and missing if it was not calculated at all. So here's an example of the output and what it looks like. So you see here the R-squared adjusted column, and you see the flag column next to it with some of them say accepted, some say not accepted. We also have a missing one here because this one only had 1 data point, which was insufficient to do any calculations. So there you see some examples of this. Now we can do further post-processing if we want to. And here's an example of one of the ones that we will use. This is a data wizard that is used to replace the values that were on the column. So back here, this does not remove any values. It just puts an accepted or not accepted. But what we might want to do in our first example is to replace this not reported with NR. So let's take a look at what this can do. So here we have, in place of reporting a value, we can put the code NR for anything that didn't meet the criteria. And then in our table, we can put explanation down here. So we'll see how to create this table a little bit later. This is just one example. Let's take a look at a second example. In this case, we would like to report all the values in a table, but instead of just replacing it, what we want to do is to append a symbol to the end of the number, so the number is still reported. Much more complicated looking set of rules here, but we'll go through how to do this. And let me show you what the results look like. Oh, I'm sorry, before I do that, here is a summary of the formulas that we'll be using. So let's just take one of these and see what happens. If the R squared flag adjusted has the text not accepted, it's going to add an asterisk in place to the data. So that would be symbol 1. Symbol 2 would be if the extrapolation is not accepted, then we would use the @ symbol there, and we could use whatever symbols we want to use. Then it combines the symbols, and then finally concatenates, takes the value of the parameter and adds the symbols to the end. And you could repeat that process for any more. We'll repeat that step 4 a few times for some other parameters. And here is the result of that table. And notice how several of these values, the numbers are here, and the symbol is appended to it. And because these have become text values now, they're automatically not included in the summary statistics. There are only 8 values listed here because these are now text values. And then the symbols are described in the footer of the table. All right, so let me demonstrate how we can do this. So I'm going to switch over to Phoenix. Let me share my screen. So here's Phoenix, and I have a data set where I have a data set with observations and dosing worksheets, and I'm going to go ahead and do an NCA here. So I will send the observation sheet to NCA, map by concentration, and I have to sort by both subject and treatment because this is a crossover study. Then I'll go to the dosing input and bring in the dosing worksheet. Time and dose are mapped. I'll do treatment and subject. Okay, so then, so that's the basic setup for the NCA. Now the rules are in the rules tab here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to enter 2 rules, and remember you can use any of these that you want, or you can leave them blank. But I'm going to say that I want R squared to be at least 0.98, and I want the extrapolation to be no more than 20%. Okay, so let me execute this NCA. So these are these were added in Phoenix 8.0. So if you have 8.0 or 8.1, you will have those business rules. You'll see the rules tab down here. Okay, in just a moment, it'll be finished. All right, so what we'll notice is the first one, let me highlight a couple of columns here. So here are the R squared values, and you see right next to it is a flag column that has accepted or not accepted. So all the values are reported, but anything that does not meet our criteria, so you see here 0.94 is less than 0.98, so it didn't meet the acceptance criteria, so it says not accepted. And then if we scroll over to about here, we will also see for the percent extrapolation in AUC, most of them are accepted, but there's one that was above 20%, so it has not accepted. Okay, so the first thing going to want to do is to make a table out of the results. We could make a table out of the results now, but we're going to do a little preparation for it by sending the final parameters pivoted to a data wizard and making a couple of custom columns that we'll use in preparation for making our table. Okay, all of the steps I'm going to be doing are transformation steps, so I'm going to add step 1 will be transformation, and all of my transformations are going to use the custom column format. So the first column I'm going to create, so for the new column name, I'm going to call it AUC-inf, and I'm just going to paste in a formula so that I don't have to type it out. So let me expand this a little bit so you can see my formula. So the formula here is just going to look at the R-squared adjusted flags, the two flags for R-squared adjusted and AUC extrapolated, and if either of those is not accepted, then what I'm going to do is replace the value with NR, or I'm going to take the value itself. All right, now that I've got this formula in here, let me get the mapping. So R-squared adjusted is already mapped, and I need to find this one will not be mapped because there's a difference in the name, so let me get that. So now I've got my two flags as input, and then here's the AUC infinite obs, which is the other one, and I'm going to use that for the unit on the column. So I'm going to add that mapping. All right, that's my first step. Then for step 2, let me add another transformation. Again, it'll be a custom transformation. This one is going to be for the elimination rate constant, KE. And I'm going to copy and paste the formula so that I don't have to type it. It uses the same format here, where it's going to look at if either of those has a not accepted, it's going to become NR, not reported. Let me get this. First one was mapped. Let me get this one mapped. I need the flag. And then up here, I'm going to use the lambda z column for the unit. Okay, that's my second formula. And then I need a third formula. So, and you would want to do this for every one of your custom, of the columns you want to include in the report. Okay, so this one is going to be for the half-life. I'm going to call it T12. And again, it's the same format of the formula that I've been using. The only difference will be that it will have the half-life HL lambda z as the half-life. So it's going to pull the value from there if it passes the rules. So if it passes both rules, it'll use the actual numerical value. Okay, so that should be my three rules. I'm going to go ahead and execute this, and then you'll finally see what it looks like. So I'm scrolling over to the very right where you see my 3 new columns that I added with the data wizard. So the first one is AUC-inf, which was pulled from the corresponding value there. And you can see that it's got numeric values whenever they were accepted, and when it wasn't accepted, it has an NR. And that's true for all of my 3 custom columns that I just created here. So these are the columns I'm going to use for creating my table. Now, let me send this to a table object. So I'm sending the result of my data wizard to a table. And for this table, my rows are subjects. The subjects are rows, that is. The treatment is going to be row stratification. I'm going to do a page break on row stratification so that I have multiple pages. And then I'm going to pick the values that I want to report on the table. Cmax, we'll do AUC last. Those were not filtered. Those were not used with acceptance criteria. Then what I'm going to do is go down and choose my 3 custom columns that I just did. All right, let me execute that so you can see what it looks like. So here's my table of the results, and you can see the ones that have the NRs are here. They're only in the tablet formulation, so they appear on this table here. Now, the other thing that I can do is add some statistics. So let me put number, let's choose that one. Oh, I want mean, standard deviation, and CV%. Okay, so add some statistics to the table. There, there we have summary statistics, and you can see that there, let's look at the bottom table here for tablet. There are 10 values of Cmax and AUC last, and then for these columns here, there are only 8 values because the NR is a text value, so it would not be included in the summary statistics. So we don't have to do anything special to do that. Now, one other thing that I might want to do is to add some explanatory text to the table. So let me just paste in some text here into the footer. So I'm going to add some text to the footer, press add, and then I can recompute the table. And now there will be a footer at the bottom of the table which explains exactly what this NR refers to. So there's my first table. Now, so that's one possible way of applying some business rules. Now let's take a look at an alternative. So I might decide I want to do it a little differently. So I'm going to start again with my NCA results, final parameters pivoted, and I'm going to go through a data wizard to prepare some columns that I will use for creating a table. Again, I'm going to be doing transformation steps. And all right, so the first one, these are all going to be custom transformations. So my first transformation will be to create the formula for the symbol that I want to use for one of the criteria. So my formula is going to be, if the R² adjusted flag is not accepted, then I'm going to put in an asterisk, otherwise I will have a blank value there. So I'll get a column called symbol 1, which gives me that information. Again, custom. Now this one's going to be very similar to that. This will now be symbol 2 as my column name. And I'm going to paste in a formula here. So if the percent extrapolation is not accepted, then we're going to add an at symbol, or it's going to stay blank. Then I want all those symbols to be combined. So I'm going to go ahead and do another custom transformation, and I'm going to create a column which I will call combined symbols. And I'm going to just combine, as the name implies. We're going to concatenate symbol 1 and symbol 2, which are the two columns I've just created. Oh, and I've got to make sure I have not been making sure my mappings were done. So here I'm going to go back and see I've got that one mapped. This one says error because I did not map. This one will not map automatically. I have to get the AUC extrapolation mapped. Okay, that should fix that. I need to make sure I'm checking these. This one should map automatically because symbol 1 and symbol 2 will match the columns I've created. All right. Now let me go on to my next one. Now I'm going to actually compute the values. The first 3 ones were just to set up the symbols that I need, but now I'm going to do the parameters that I want to report on my table. So I'm going to take the AUC at infinity. So that one is what it's going to do is it's going to let's start with this round function here. It's going to take the AUC inf obs, it's going to round it to 2 decimal places, and then it's going to append or concatenate that together with the combined symbols. Okay, so I'm going to use the same formula format for my other custom columns. So let me add another one. It takes a little while to set this up, but as you'll see, once you have implemented your rules and come up with the way of creating your rules, then applying this to other data sets can be automated. Okay, so here we are taking KE is going to be the lambda z value, and then I have one more. Step 6 is going to be our last transformation, and this one will be the half-life, which I will call T12. Oops, I didn't have it. T12, and I'm going to bring in the formula for that. And each one of these formulas will be a concatenate. In this case, it's taking HL lambda Z. All right, now let's see that I've got, these should have all mapped, all these other steps should have mapped properly. Oh, one thing I should do is I should grab the unit so that my table has units on it. I want to make sure that I am actually using the value for the unit. Let me check step 4 as well to see if that one was. Okay, so I've got units on all 3. 4, 5, and 6 are my 3 custom columns. All right, so that was a lot, but let me go ahead and execute this so you can see it. And so I will have, let's look at the results here. So first of all, my first formula, so there were 6 steps here. The first was to calculate for any symbol 1 is whenever the flag on the R squared adjusted was not met, it would put a symbol here. So those were the 2 rows that had that. Symbol 2 is the ones that did not meet the second criterion, which was on the percent extrapolation. So these mean 20% extrapolation. Remember that one had like 45. And then combined symbols just merges those 2 together, concatenates those into one set of symbols, and then each formula then will add whatever the combined symbols are to the end. So we end up taking the numerical value, rounding it off to 2 places, and adding, in this case, the asterisk to the end, and in this case, the asterisk and the @ symbol, both of those. So that's the data we need for the table. Now, let me go ahead and create the actual table. So the data wizard has helped us set up all of the information we need to create our custom table. So subject is our row ID, treatment is our stratification. I'll do a page break on stratification as before. I'll get the same values I was looking at before. So let me find Cmax, AUC last, and then my 3 custom columns. There. Let me remap that one so they're in the right order. Okay, so, and then I'm going to go ahead, while I'm at it, I'm going to go ahead and put my statistics on here. Mean, standard deviation, and CV percent. Okay, let me execute this and see if that looks like what I want. Okay, so again, the top table doesn't have any. They're all 10 values. The bottom table with the tablet is where we had some of the acceptance criteria were not met. So here we have then the ones are marked. So in this case, they're in the table, so you can still see the number, but they are marked as not having been accepted. Notice how, because these are now text values, they are not included in the statistics. Even though there's a number here, it's a text value because it's got this appended symbol at the end. So it's ignored by the summary statistics. And as before, we might want to add a footer to the table. So let me go back and go to footers. And the note would be a little different than the other case. But this is just an example of what you could do to describe what each of those symbols represent and how that those would not be included in the summary statistics. So that's my custom table. Now, you've gone to a lot of work to set up some business rules, and you might want to use either or both of those tables. And let me just untangle the items that I've done in my workflow here. So here we have a workflow that we have been generating while we've been doing this. And so all of that work that we've gone to create these custom tables could be applied to other NCA analyses every time you want to repeat this. So what I would do is put in some data links. So I'm going to right-click in the background and connect this to data links. You'll see the purpose of the data links in a moment after I create my template. This will preserve our links here. So let me just go ahead and execute the workflow and make sure that the entire workflow works. It's going to go through and update everything. So it'll do the NCA. It'll go through all of the processes here. Okay, and it will go to some results in just a second after it finishes updating. Here are and we can see the 2 tables, the NCA, everything has been done here. All right, so the workflow works. Now let's go back to the diagram. So now I can save this as a template. So I'm viewing the workflow diagram. So when I click this Save Workflow Template, it'll do my selected one. I'm going to save it as Business Rules, which I've done before, so I'm going to replace it. All right, so I've just saved it as a template called Business Rules. Now, let me create a new project, and I'm going to bring in the data set that I had used previously. So let me just import that data set. But you can imagine this is, just pretend this is another data set. It could very well be a different data set formatted for an NCA analysis. All right, so then now I have my data set and I have an empty workflow. But because I have saved that workflow, I can just go Apply Business Rules. This will bring in my workflow. Here is the entire workflow, and here you see the purpose of the data links. That now I know all I have to do is connect up my observations to the observation data link, my dosing to the dosing data link, and however, because this is the same format that I use for all my NCA analyses, I don't have to do anything to it. I just have to execute it. So imagine this is yet another data set that comes through, and because I've set up all my data rules, all of the data wizards and tables and everything, it will execute the entire workflow, and once it's done, I'll have the same set of results that I had before. So NCA results, and I have my tables. And they're all formatted exactly the way that they were. And we could even go further than this and change the headers and do some other things. Because it's in a workflow, it's easy to do that. Well, we've reached the end of our software demonstration. Let's go on and see if there are any questions. I did see something coming out. Let me check.
Tom,
panels
Tom,
here.
You're breaking up a little bit, Tom.
Yes.
You're breaking up.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know what I can change in the settings.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
It's a little wobbly. Well, maybe it's me. I hear people saying they can hear you fine. Anyway, so go ahead. Can you see the question?
Okay. Yes, I do see a question. Is it possible to set the values in brackets instead? I'm not quite sure. I'm not sure if that refers to the values for the rules or the. Oh yes. I see what this is. You could put the values in brackets. Yeah, you could certainly, with the data wizard, you can do any kind of formatting that you want. So keep in mind that when I did this, I created custom columns that would have the content that I wanted to show up in the table. So yes, you could format it any way you wanted. Put the numbers in brackets. You could put, instead of NR, you could put it. You could format it differently. You could append. I appended symbols, but you could do whatever you want to the data. So you would just put that in there. That would also be considered a text value, and then that would not be reported in the statistics. Okay, let's see. And then I also saw that there was a question that somebody posted in the chat. So let me take a look at that. Yeah. So let me check the chat here. Okay, so I see, let's see, let me scroll down and find that one. Yeah, where can we find a detailed explanation of the formula syntax? Yes, let me go back into application sharing so I can answer this one, because I think it's very useful. Let me go into share my screen 2. Okay, go back into Phoenix. So in the data wizard, the best place to find information about the function is, first of all, let's go to the setup and look at one of these transformations here. So the custom formula, you have access to a lot of functions. Now we have used in here, so when you're in the custom one, you'll see this function list over here. There is, so let me add a new rule here. Wait, I'm sorry, I got to set this to transformation. Let me put in a new one here. So if I want to do a custom, when I go in and set custom, I will have all sorts of functions here. So it's just a matter of finding the one that I need. If I drag if out here, it's going to give me a sample of what information it's looking for. So it would want a conditional, so I could put in, and I can say this, let me just keep this simple and say A is greater than 3. That's my condition. The fact that I've typed A in here gives me an A mapping. Notice how I've got mappings for A, true, and false. I can either use a mapping, so this one that says true, I could get a value here. So let me just call this one B. So I could have a mapping B. I can also put in text. So I could put in some text here. Well, in this case, let me keep it simple. We used NR before. Let me get rid of that E. That was so this one is saying if A is greater than 3, so there'd be a mapping for A, and I could put it in whatever column I wanted. It would, if it was true, it would take the mapping from B. Otherwise, it would put NR. So that's sort of the if statement, which was the basis of what I was doing. So all of these statements are described here. I believe also if you go into the context-sensitive help by pressing F1, you will get the documentation on the transformation step and what can be done with it, and they give lots of examples here. So the documentation does cover things, and there are examples here of using various kinds of formulas for custom functions, and then it also has a description of each one of those functions that can be used. So by building up expressions in here, you can do just about anything that you need. Okay, so let's see. That was all the questions that I saw at the point.
I think there are a few more.
There are a few more, but we have reached the end of our.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we've reached the end of the time, and I know that there were more questions I didn't have a chance to get to, but what we will do is answer all those questions and post them. Cheryl, you want to describe how that's going to work?
I think it's done through Certara U, and I think when you get your email after the webinar,
right, yeah.
It will direct you that way. Mm-hmm.
But we will have a place where all the webinar recording and all of the Q&A and all the questions and the answers, even the ones we didn't get a chance to get to, will be addressed in that. So you'll be able to download a list of all the questions and all the answers.
Correct.
And all right. So thank you for joining us. And oh, wait, I do have one last thing that I need to point out. We have one more Express webinar coming up on creating CDISC domains using a new tool that will be released with the next version of Phoenix, PK Submit. So this will be on Wednesday, July 10th. Kevin Trim will be speaking at 1 p.m. Eastern. So mark your calendar for that date, and we hope to see you there. All right, so I think we're all done. Thank you for joining, and we'll conclude. You can disconnect now.